بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. He talked about circles of spirituality, as is titled in brackets. Basically, sitting with the people of scholarship, not only those that are advanced in their knowledge of Islam, but they're also mentors, as mentioned by the Imam. He says Rabbaniyin, people that develop others to follow the same path of piety. Talked about allocating time every day to make dua and also to send salutations upon the Prophet ﷺ. So before we go forward to the next chapter about seeking Islamic knowledge on page number 9, I want to jump back, page number 3, the verse or the verses that are mentioned from Surah Qaf, verses 31 to 35. I want us to keep in mind verse number 33. Allah says, "Man khashiya ar-Rahmana bil ghaibi wa ja'a bi qalbin munib." And the person who has khashiyah, reverence of the Most Merciful, while they are in private settings, and they also come with a repentant heart. Keep that portion of this section in mind as we look at the next chapter. So let's look at page number 9. The Imam, he says, rahimahullah, persevere in learning Islamic jurisprudence and becoming acquainted with the legal rulings, seeking the reward of Allah Almighty. Essentially, becoming a student of Islamic knowledge, in particular the legal matters, understanding the legal rulings. And you do this, of course, taking account with Allah or hoping for His reward. So here we're talking not only about the pursuit of knowledge, but the intent behind it is sincerely for Allah's pleasure. It says, do not intend to become a judge, an instructor, or one that receives a salary, right? This shouldn't be the intention. If that ends up being the result, then alhamdulillah. But the underlying intention behind seeking knowledge is something that is devotional in nature. Learning about Allah, learning about His law, learning about His Prophet, learning His book. These are all acts of devotion. They're not just tools. They're not just means to an end of employment. They are the end. Learning about Allah, that is the end. It's not a stepping stone to something else. That's the end. I mean, that's what it's all about. So it shouldn't be, as most other pursuits of knowledge are, is I need this in order to do that, right? Some of these things is just learning about Allah is worship. And that's what we're created for. That's what we're after. So he says, he mentions the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, this report in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, a very famous hadith. He says, every person will get what he intended, and actions are judged by their intentions. So whoever's immigration was for the sake of Allah and His Messenger, then his immigration was for the sake of Allah and His Messenger. But whoever's immigration was to achieve some worldly gain or to take some woman in marriage, then his immigration was for that which he immigrated. Very well known hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَلِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَّا نَوَى وَالْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. This is what he says here. There's various narrations of this particular hadith. However, there is some context to it. This was referring to the migration. That's why the migration's mentioned, the migration of the Prophet from Medina to Mecca. From Mecca to Al-Madinah. And many of the companions were instructed to make that migration to find stability in Al-Madinah. And it was for the sake of faith, not for the sake of business, for the sake of relocating for a new, fancier lifestyle, or for marriage. And there was one particular individual that he was noted to have migrated because he wanted to get married. And so that's why the Prophet ﷺ mentioned these specific details. But the application, or the application of it is very broad. It's not just specific to migrating or marrying or seeking a job, but it's all inclusive. It says, seek Islamic knowledge to gain the favor of Allah Almighty, and to become aware of His legal rulings, obligations, and prohibited boundaries in order to act upon it, and to teach to other believers, so that the religion of Allah can be practiced appropriately within the Muslim society. Right, so the Prophet ﷺ mentions about the Quran, for example. This is related by Uthman ibn Affan. He says, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَ. The best of you are those that learn the Quran and then teach it. Right, so that the benefit is received personally, and then it's contributed and it's spread. And that's an act of da'wah, or invitation to righteousness, by teaching. Teaching or learning the Islamic knowledge is to remove ignorance from yourself, and then by teaching it you help others remove it from themselves in the process. And if you're able to do that, you can reform a society. You can reform a community, reform a society through education. It says, by doing so, you will become a defender of the Sharia and a soldier from the armies of Allah Almighty. And that's what we need to see this role as. A defender of the Sharia. Someone who defends Allah's law. Because right now it's an onslaught of attack on the Muslim community. And we're not talking about bearing arms and putting on armor. We're not talking about sitting in tanks and drones and all that. We're talking about a mental attack. A theological attack, if you will. It's not about stepping on the battlefield anymore. It's about occupying the mind. It's about occupying a person's heart. It's about having them adopt one way or the other. That's where the real battle is happening right now. And that's where the resources have to be channeled and funneled to. We're not, it's interesting when you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because this is coming up, something to begin to think about. The fundraisers that were held during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, because there were numerous fundraisers, and the Prophet was a fundraiser himself. He would raise funds largely for what? For war. He would raise funds largely to arm soldiers, because that's where the battle was. The battle was about life. It was about territory. It was about control of landmass, occupation. It was about presence. Their war wasn't happening online and on Twitter and in the news and in the media and on YouTube, where you don't need to go to battle anymore. All you have to do is plant the seeds and watch the fruits grow. That's not where the battle was. That's not how it worked then. So the fundraisers were about, arming the soldiers to defend the faith, to allow people the choice to be Muslim, to pick for themselves what faith they wanted, and to protect it from being corrupted. And so they channeled that funding into those necessary operations. So like today, we're not funding soldiers. We need to be we're not funding the soldiers that go onto the battlefield. We need to fund these soldiers, referred by the great Imam here, the defenders of the Sharia, and the soldiers from the armies of Allah. Because even if just a single man was to become guided by you, that alone would be better for you in the eyes of Allah than anything under the sun. So this is also referring to a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that guiding one person by your hand, by the grace of Allah, by your hand, is better than anything that the sun rises upon. It's better than the world and everything that it contains, to guide one person. It says, with this pure intention, you will, by the will of Allah, become from the elite scholars whose hearts have been illuminated by the light of Allah, those who have truly inherited the fruits of knowledge and attained its spiritual reality. The fruits of knowledge are action. The fruits of knowledge are the actions that one does, that are initiated by understanding. And you will attain its spiritual reality. It says they are the people of reverence and trepidation. And this is where we come back to that verse, Man khashya ar-Rahman, that I asked you to remember. Whoever has reverence of Allah while they are alone, it is the scholars that have true reverence and trepidation. Allah says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Those who truly have reverence of Allah are those that possess knowledge. And this is a testament to the importance of knowledge in our tradition, that if you really want to traverse the path of the pious, saintly types, the awliya, then it has to be one based upon sound and authentic knowledge. Ignorance is a locked door. You will not be on the path. You're locked from it. You're blocked from it. So you have to gain access to the path of the awliya. You have to unlock that door, and that's through true knowledge, deep knowledge, and authentic understanding of our tradition. He goes on and he says, be careful that your heart does not become like the spiritually ill hearts of the corrupt scholars that work only for the material world. For their hearts are distracted and focused on this world and gaining ranks of position. Again, similar to what he opened up with, that your intention changes to now achieve some type of position, some type of job, or some type of salary or something of that nature. Says they are focused on this world and gaining ranks of position. They rejoice when they acquire it and are disappointed when they fail to gain it. They rejoice when they acquire it. And this is very tricky, and this is more for those that are out front in the public eye, that are religious leaders, those types, in that the issue of becoming popular and becoming famous and gaining status and gaining notoriety and gaining a following is very, very delicate, because it can easily corrupt the heart, in that it becomes the objective. It becomes, what's sought after, as opposed to a pure intention. So, and it's very dangerous, because what it ends up doing, that idea, is it makes who should be a defender of the Sharia beholden to their followers, who are typically from the lay congregation. Typically speaking, they're from the lay congregation. They're in need of equipping. They don't have the tools to discern between right and wrong. They do come with a lot of emotion, typically. They do come with a lot of feelings, and often they come with some baggage that needs to be worked through. And the religious leader is there to help them get through that. But he can't be beholden to that at the same time, to that, that following. If you're worried, well, if I address this issue, I could lose my followers, I could lose my status, I could lose my likes, my Facebook's not going to get liked, my Instagram's not going to get liked. And this doesn't mean you don't use tact, you don't employ some strategy, you don't address your followers in a way which they will accept. No, all that has to be done. That's the way of the Prophet ﷺ, to be wise and to be strategic. But sometimes there are just some things that people don't want to hear. They need to hear, they don't want to hear it. And if you're beholden to them, then you've lost sight of what it is that you're supposed to be doing. And so that's extremely delicate and has to be managed constantly. The intention is very delicate. For such people, knowledge has become the worldly profit through which they gain material welfare and worldly rank. Every person will get what they intended, and whosoever deals with Allah sincerely will not lose. That's crucial. It says, it was narrated in some of the accounts that Allah Almighty said, I created the creation only so that they could reap from me. I created the creation only so that they could profit, if you will, from me. Successful is the one whose transaction is with Allah Almighty. He's given asceticism in this world. They've been blessed with zuhud. Zuhud, again, is, being pleased with what you have. And your heartstrings not attached to material goods. You can be, Imam Ahmad was actually asked, can you be wealthy and be a zahid? And he replied, yes, you can be wealthy and be a zahid so long as your heart is not attached to that wealth. Meaning, you're going to worship Allah regardless. You're going to be a good person regardless if you have it or you don't have it. There are the challenge that people have that when things are going good, it's very bad spiritually. And then there are those that when things are going, it's very good spiritually. It's just all about what it is that they possess, what it is that they have. And they struggle balancing that, and that's something that we all have to deal with. He says, directed to the hereafter and seeks the reward of Allah Almighty in their search of knowledge, actions, and the remaining endeavors, whether apparent or concealed. Apparent meaning whether it's public, or concealed meaning private. And from Allah alone, help is sought. So again, as was mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Qaf, that verse when he says, Man khashiya ar-Rahman, whoever has reverence for Allah while in private, this is the true reverence. So the person that is seeking reverence through knowledge, like the way of the scholars, their pursuit of knowledge and acting upon that knowledge, it is consistent. Whether they're in front of people or they're in private, whether they're alone in the depths of their home, hidden from the eyes of those that would judge them immediately. So that's the way of the saints, is that they're consistent in their righteousness. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.